Look around the room you are in and consider the objects in it. The phone, the furniture, the clothes, the appliances, very likely the materials in the walls themselves. A staggering share of it, at some point, sat inside a steel box on a giant ship crossing an ocean to reach you. That box, and the vast floating machinery that carries it, is the quiet foundation of the modern world of goods. And one Danish company sits closer to the heart of that system than almost any other. It is called Maersk. This is a series about the companies that run the world and the rivals they left behind. Today it is Maersk, and it stands for the least glamorous and most essential fact of the global economy: that the miracle of cheap goods from everywhere depends entirely on the humble business of moving heavy things across water. We talk endlessly about who makes our products. We almost never think about who carries them. To understand Maersk, you have to understand the object at the center of it all: the shipping container. Before it, loading a ship was slow, chaotic, and hugely expensive, with goods hauled aboard piece by piece by armies of dock workers. Then, in the 1950s, an American named Malcolm McLean championed a deceptively simple idea: a standard steel box that could be packed once and moved seamlessly between ship, train, and truck. That plain metal box quietly changed the world. The consequences are difficult to overstate. Standardizing the container collapsed the cost of shipping so dramatically that it became almost trivial to make something on one side of the planet and sell it on the other. The container did not just speed up trade. It is one of the primary reasons global trade, as we know it, exists at all. Entire supply chains, spanning continents, were built on the back of that unremarkable steel box. Maersk built itself into one of the giants of this containerized world. For years, it was the single largest container shipping line on Earth, operating a colossal fleet of vessels along the great trade routes that lace the planet together. Over more than a century, a family-controlled Danish firm grew into one of the most important logistics companies that has ever existed, almost entirely out of the public eye. It is worth pausing on the sheer physical scale of the machines involved. The largest container ships are among the biggest moving objects humanity has ever built, floating steel islands longer than the tallest skyscrapers are tall, each capable of carrying 20,000 containers or more in a single voyage. Picture that many boxes stacked into one vessel, gliding silently across an ocean. It is one of the most quietly staggering sights of the industrial age. And the ships are only half of it. Maersk also operates a sprawling global network of the ports and terminals, where those boxes are lifted on and off, the critical junctions where sea meets land. Controlling not just the vessels, but the gateways they pass through, turns the company into something more than a carrier. It becomes, in effect, a piece of the world's basic physical infrastructure, woven into the seams of global trade. The scale of the whole system is easiest to grasp through one overwhelming fact. Around 80% of the world's traded goods, by volume, are carried across the sea. Not by air, not by land, but by ship. This makes ocean freight the true circulatory system of the physical economy, and the handful of companies that dominate it, Maersk foremost among them, into something like the keepers of that system. So what is the moat around a business like this? It is, above all, staggering capital. A single one of the largest container ships can cost well over $100 million, and a serious line needs a whole fleet of them, plus the terminals, the containers, and the logistics networks to match. This is one of the most capital-intensive businesses in the entire world, and that enormous cost of entry is precisely what keeps the club of global carriers so small. Maersk, of course, is not alone at the top. For much of its history, it led the field, but it has since been overtaken in raw capacity by the fiercely private Mediterranean shipping company known as MSC. Behind them come France's CMA CGM, Germany's Hapag-Lloyd, and the Chinese state-backed giant COSCO. These few enormous carriers, between them, move a very large fraction of everything that crosses the world's oceans in a box. And here the story takes a peculiar turn, because these rivals do not simply compete. They cooperate, in a way few other industries would tolerate. The major lines group themselves into alliances, pooling their ships and sharing space on each other's vessels to fill the enormous routes efficiently. So the same companies that fight fiercely for your business will, at the same time, be quietly sailing on one another's ships. It is competition and collaboration, tangled together on a planetary scale. this is also a famously brutal boom and bust business. When trade is booming, everyone orders new ships, but those ships take years to build and last for decades. So the new capacity often arrives just as demand cools, flooding the market and crushing prices. The industry swings violently between fat years of enormous profit and lean years of punishing losses, a roller coaster driven by the long, slow rhythm of building the vessels themselves. Now we arrive at the question this series always asks of what actually breaks if this system falters. And here we have already seen a vivid preview. When a single vast container ship wedged itself across the Suez Canal a few years ago, it blocked one of the world's key arteries and sent shockwaves through global supply chains almost overnight. Factories idled, deliveries stalled, and the true fragility of the system was suddenly, briefly, visible to everyone. That episode was a small taste of a much larger dependency. The just-in-time global economy, in which goods arrive exactly when needed and almost nothing is stockpiled, rests entirely on this shipping network, humming along without interruption. When it works, it is invisible. When it stumbles, empty shelves and stalled factories can appear across the world with frightening speed. We have built our material lives on the assumption that the boxes will always keep moving. Which leads to the uncomfortable question, in one of its most physical forms yet. Is it wise for so much of the world's trade to funnel through a small number of giant carriers, a few narrow canals, and a handful of enormous ports? The efficiency is undeniable and immense. But efficiency and fragility are often two sides of the same coin, and a system optimized to the razor's edge can be a system with very little room to absorb a shock. To be fair, and it truly deserves saying, the achievement here is genuinely staggering. The container shipping system moves an almost unimaginable quantity of goods around the planet at a cost so low it rounds, for most products, to almost nothing per item. The cheap and abundant goods that define modern material life simply would not exist without it. It is one of the great unsung engineering and logistical triumphs of the modern age. And that is the quiet lesson of this particular giant. Beneath the glamour of the brands and the technology sits the unglamorous physical reality of the box and the ship, patiently carrying the substance of the world from where it is made to where it is wanted. Maersk is one of the great keepers of that hidden system, a Danish shipping company most people rarely think about, quietly helping to carry the material foundation of modern life across the seas. So the next time a package arrives, or you pick up almost any manufactured object at all, it is worth a moment's thought for the journey it made. Odds are it spent part of its life as one anonymous box among thousands, stacked on a steel giant, crossing a dark ocean in the care of a company whose name it never bore. That silent voyage, repeated billions of times a year, is one of the quiet engines that keeps the whole modern world supplied.